go. Welcome back to the trade room here. And today we're going to have a look at the cheapies, the cash cows heading into 2026 season. We're quite literally, 2 weeks away from Vegas, baby, locking in your teams. Now, if you are new to Supercoach and obviously, or second year of Supercoach, that sort of thing, you can change your team after the Vegas game. So obviously we can get a look at the TLT for the other 6 games after the 2 Vegas games. So you don't have to fully lock in your team before the Vegas games. However, obviously, if you are looking to have Cowboys, Dragons, Knights, and Bulldogs in your team, you do obviously need to lock those players in before Vegas here. But as I said, this episode, we're going to go through the cheapies for this one here. So previous episodes, being weekly episodes, done my team review, done guys that you should be starting with, and then guys that you should be avoiding to start the season with as well. And been doing really well, so really appreciate obviously the support that I've been getting. Make sure you go check out all my socials as well. They'll be all in the bio and they'll be on the screen there as well once we get into the next slide. But how I've done it with the cheapies here, I was going to do 20, but I could only fit in sort of like 19. You'll see with my graphics there. I've done it by A grade, B grade, and I've done C grade as well. So the A grade cheapies are going to be the cheapies that you'll most likely really want to start with in your team. Guys that are going to really sort of build some cash early on. Then your B grade cheapies, probably guys that most like a 50-50 chance of getting a role in the the starting team heading into round 1. Or guys that, they may be in that team sort of round 1, but maybe they might not make too much cash. And then your C grade cheap is essentially going to be like your red lights, right? So don't really go there. They may be sort of nuffs. Maybe you can have them there as enough in your team, but they're not really guys that are really going to feature early on in the season for their respective team. Now, if you are new to Supercoach and you're wondering what is a cheapie, what is a cash cow, what we call them as well. So cash cow / cheapie is a guy that is generally going to be under the 320k sort of mark, around that sort of mark. Once you get above that sort of mark, you are sort of looking around that sort of mid range, which is like that 320 to, I guess, that 550 sort of mark, 520k maybe sort of thing. And anyone above that is kind of getting to that premium sort of range. With your cash cow, you pretty much want them to have like a starting spot in your team or in their team for round 1, right? You don't want them to banking on for like round 2 or round 3, that sort of thing, because that's just going to take away like rounds where they're not making cash. You want them to have a starting spot in the round 1 team. So big one is obviously like Ethan Sanders, Daniel Atkinson. They're your 2 main halfbacks that we know are pretty much going to be starting in round 1 for the Raiders and Dragons. You want them to be in an impactful position in the team as well. So they could also be a starting halfback. They can goal kicking as well. They could be on the wing. They could potentially be a center there as well. Starting in the front row is not too bad. You'll want to know how the role is sort of looking. Maybe they're just going first 20 minutes and then they're coming off after that. You want to know that they have an impactful position in their team. It could be a hooker sort of thing. Obviously, going with the one below, likely playing 60 plus minutes. So, as I said, if you're looking at sort of like a cheapie front rower who is like around 250k, but is only going to be playing 30 to 40 minutes, good chance they're not going to be making the most amount of cash, really. So, maybe you can look at other, sort of players that are maybe a little bit more, spending up a little bit more, that they're going to get a bigger, more impactful role in the team. That can be someone like potentially like a Jesse Colquhoun, around that sort of lines there. Maybe a Taniela Paseka, Thomas Flegler potentially there as well. A couple sort of those options around the mid sort of 300 mark that we don't confidently know yet, but we probably know they're going to get at least 40, 45, 50 minutes in their team. And then the last one, which is pretty important, with your cashies, your cash cows, your cheapies, you want them to be making good cash. So probably around the sort of, 200k is generally like working pretty well, getting up to around at least 400k. So you can then upgrade to a gun sort of player from there and spend that little bit less upgrading to a gun than you would at the start of the season. And generally going to that fallen sort of gun spot, a gun who has lost a bit of cash to start the season after about 5-6 weeks, but they're not really generally that price often. You can get them at a good discount. And sometimes you can, if it's a CTW and you're training out a CTW, which a cheapie, which they're kind of maxing it around the 450k, maybe even close to 500k, then you can go to someone like that's like really fallen down 100 to 150k after that first 6 weeks. There can definitely happen, and it's awesome when it does. And what I want to know, obviously, with big things with the cheapies and cash cows as well, which I've learned over my years of playing Supercoach, is give them a chance. Like, you'll probably get a good gauge after sort of 2-3 games how they're sort of looking in the team or how the team is going. Big one for me last year was Jackson Purdue, and for a lot of players. So Jackson Purdue obviously is like close to 500-600k this year. In that CTW role, he was starting left center last year for the Cowboys, and he started at 230k, I think. And they got smacked round 1 against Manly. They looked awful the next week, and a lot of players after sort of 2 rounds, he wasn't making any cash after 2 rounds, and they traded him out. However, I gave him a chance, and I ended up trading him out for about 550k. He ended up going great guns after that. I just gave him another chance, and I think he had Penrith in round 3. He did really, really well. He went for like nearly 100. I think he got 90 or something. Did really well. Ended up making some really good cash. Ended up going for like another ton there as well. Ended up making some really good cash for me, and I was then able to trade him to, I forget who I traded him to, but I was able to trade him to a really good gun in the team in the CTW area, which is really impactful for my season and just in general there. So with your cash cows, as I said, you'll know sort of after round 2 or 3 how their position is in the team. But if you're unsure if they're like, it's a cash cow, right? They're not going to lose any cash really. If you're sort of unsure whether to trade in or trade out, just give it another chance. You don't have to play him that next week, but just maybe give him another chance there just to see how they go. 3-4 weeks maybe, just to see how they go, because Jackson Purdue was such a good example last year for me of just maintaining the cheapie. Just keep him in your team to give it another chance. If you think there's some talent there, Cowboys score a lot of points, and it paid off for me in the end there. Now, let's go into our first one. Going to our A grade cheapies. So I do have 2 slides for this one here. I think I do have 9 A grade cheapies to start the season there. I obviously won't spend literally like 5 minutes on each, because then the episode will go for a long time. But a lot of these ones that we're pretty much like everyone sort of knows about, or if you're new to Supercoach, these are the guys that you definitely should be targeting to start the season. Then you can be able to afford guns in your team. So most players will be starting with these players in their team to start the year. So got the position, got the price there, ownership, that sort of thing. So Jonah Pezzett is obviously the main cheapie to start the season. 5'8" there at Parramatta next to Mitchell Moses to start the season at 235k. Ownership is 67% at the moment, which is absolutely crazy. Projected price, I think he can get to that 400k. I think maybe he can get a bit more. So you'll see like put projected price. That's literally my prediction, what I think they can get to sort of ceiling wise. Maybe he can get a bit more. Maybe he can go a bit less. Maybe get to 380k. Maybe you look at trading to a better 5'8" from there, depending on matchups. He's going to be playing 80 minutes, which is a good thing. Next one, you've got Cheese there, 235k expected to play. I think he'll play around 45 to 50 minutes role there. I think what I would want to see from South is him starting at hooker, play that sort of first 20 to 25 minutes, get Mamazelos on, and then get Brandon Smith on for like the last 20 to 25 minutes. Again, playing maybe more in the forward sort of role there. I think he can go around a point per minute kind of thing. So I think he can definitely get to around that 420k sort of price there. Next one is going to be a starting winger for the Dragons. That is going to be Setu 2 coming over from the Warriors this season here. Looks like Setu 2 will get the starting wing spot over David Farley here. That's going on. This is recorded before their trial tonight against Souths, where he is starting on the wing. He also started last week on the wing against the Knights there as well. Bottom price, 201k, 38.1% ownership. I think he can get above the 400k mark. I think he'll have Moses Sully next to him there in that right center spot. So should be a few good opportunities. If he gets one try, he's going to get 30 points for that try there. So, if he has one try every 2 games, that sort of thing, maybe he goes 81 game, then he goes 20 the next game, then he sort of averages out where I think he can make around a couple 100K at least. So definitely a very good option. Going to be obviously playing 80 minutes there as well. Next one should be the right winger for the Gold Coast Titans. That is going to be Siali Faimani. Again, bottom price 201K. Looks like he will be starting on that wing for the Titans. He started there yesterday, on Thursday against the Dolphins. 36.2% ownership there. 380K, which is what I think he can get to there. Not sure how the Titans will look. Honestly, he could be great guns. He could honestly be like a 500K sort of player there. You got Daniel Atkinson there, who is starting halfback there for the Dragons, 235K. Starting at a bottom price because we're so used to seeing him come off the bench for the Sharkies there. 29% ownership there. I think he can get around that 415K sort of mark there for the Dragons. Probably going to be more the ball player, I'd say, in this team here over Kyle Flanagan. So you think he should get some assists in that team there as well. Then it's an interesting one. You either go with one of these cheapy halfbacks or you can actually start with both. And that is going to be Ethan Sanders is the other one who has more of a higher ownership, 246K there at 40.3% there. I think with the goal kicking, he is going to be goal kicking for the Raiders. He can get to around that 440K mark there. However, I think later on in the season, I think he can get close to that 500K mark. And that's because the news last night came out that Ethan Stranger is going to be on that right-hand side there. So that means Ethan Sanders is going to be on the left edge there with Hudson Young there on that edge as well, which is, I think, is huge. I think you should have Timoko, I think, on that edge there as well. That is, and Xavier Savage there on the left wing. I think that's great signs for a guy like Ethan Sanders. Are going to be not too reliant, I guess, when it comes to like the goal kicking, like not goal kicking, but the kicking side of things. I think that is going to let Ethan Sanders sort of play his game. Might score an odd try there as well, but the link up he'll have there with Hudson Young should bank on him getting more assists like what we saw with Ethan Strange last year. Those last four guys are going to be playing 80 minutes, obviously, in that starting role there. Crossing over to your next sort of A-grade cheapies there, and these three are pretty, I would be looking strong at having these guys in your team there as well. First one is the starting right edge, we think, for the Storm. That's going to be Atavalu Lisati there, replacing Eli Katoa for the year. 269K, 47.4% ownership. Projected wise, I think 480K is about the median I'd expect from him before you can, I guess, trade him out. We saw last night he played against the Raiders. He started on that right edge. And wild what the new scoring does, because according to Fox Stats, he just had 27 tackles. NRL Stats, which is a new scoring system that Supercoach is using, he will have 41 tackles there, which is 41 points. And then he just has a couple runs and he gets to around that 480, that 48 average, which would get him to that 480K price. So could be a guy we hold quite long term as a sort of maybe that 2RF4 on the bench there. Really good value. But as I said, if that right edge for the Storm is absolutely prominent there, it's just prime real estate next to Jerome Hughes there. So if he does click, honestly, the sky's the limit, I reckon. We saw Eli Katoa was one of the most expensive right edges going around in the game sort of last year and previous years as well. Next to Jerome Hughes there, gets a lot of kicking assists, gets a lot of short balls as well. Prime real estate for Lasati there, so definitely should be making cash there. Does he play 80 minutes? I'm just going to say he plays around 65. Maybe you can put a guy like Jack Hetherington there as well, which I thought, who will feature in this episode, who I thought was quite strong last night when I'm recording this on Saturday. And your next two from the Gold Coast Titans, you got Josh Patson there, who I expect to start there on the right edge, 275K, 22.9% ownership there, 430K there, I think projected. Expected again around the 65 minutes. And then your next one's going to be Cooper Bye, who started at lock against the Dolphins there on Thursday night, 2RF there. It looks like, because no Jermaine Jolliffe there for the season, looks like Tino will go into that front row role there for the Titans there. So it means Cooper Bye really opens up the door for him in that lock role there. It looks like an absolute gun as well. 235K, 38.6% ownership as well. I would expect him maybe early on to play 60 minutes. If you can play 80 in that role, that's absolutely awesome. But I'm not expecting big, like massive minutes early on. But he does look like a gun. I do think the potential is there for him to play bigger minutes if needed. So there's your A-grade cheapies, guys. Let me know in the comments how many of these A-grade cheapies are you starting with? Are you going the double cheapie sort of route, a halfback there? I'm starting with, I think, what are we looking at? I think I'm starting with 8 of these 9 guys. I'm just starting with Sanders over Atkinson at the moment there. But again, a lot of doors can be sort of open there in regards to what cheapies you start with, but these are the A-grade cheapies I'm expecting to definitely be named in a starting role in round 1. And I would be highly advising if you're new to Supercoach, starting with these guys there in your team, which would allow you to afford a lot of your guns in your team, like your Hines, like your Clearys. Maybe you want a gun fullback, Harry Grant, Payne Haas, that sort of thing. All right, let's have a look at your B grade cheapies. So your B grade cheapies are going to be your guys that, honestly, a couple of these guys looked really good a few weeks ago. Now they're just sort of cooled off a bit. Maybe they're not a massive chance now of playing in the round 1 team, but maybe they are. Maybe we'll see them feature later on in the season potentially. But these are guys, if you are in your team, I'll be probably considering look at the A grade cheapies that I mentioned before. And your first one's going to be Tom Chester. Now, I had Tom Chester when I was doing these graphics as an A grade cheapie. However, going on from last night, Cowboys played the Panthers in that trial, and I get it, it's just a trial. But that's all we have to go off as well. Tom Chester didn't get the start. They started Purdue there in the left center role, then they started Jake Clifford there in the 7, Tom Dearden there in the 6. And I get it, it was against a very, very young, inexperienced Penrith side, but it did look pretty awesome there. Thing with Jackson Purdue, I think possibly you just got to give him another year there at that center role there, and then you can put him into that number 6 role. Jay Clifford looks awesome in that 7 role there for the Cowboys, man. Like, he just really does look the goods. I don't think Tom Chester now is going to get a name in Vegas. I think this is the thing now. I think he might get named in Vegas because Zach Labour may miss it due to suspension. But that does make the big trouble. If you start with Tom Chester in round 1, he's named for round 1 in Vegas, and then Zach Labour is named in round 2 for Vegas in that right center, and Jackson Purdue's left center, you're left with a bit of a problem there as a cheapie CTW who is not doing anything there. You're probably going to have to look at using a trade to upgrade. Maybe you don't have one of the A-grade cheapies that I spoke about there. Maybe we see Makasini there get named there in round 2. Could be left with a big problem there. So I've definitely cooled off a bit on Tom Chester. I've just given him a 50% chance of playing round 1 now. But to play sort of round 2, I'll probably give him a lower chance now after what I saw last night. If he does get the start and starts playing games there, I think he can get to around that 420k price. But I think we may see that later on in the season if we see Jackson Purdue go to the 6 role and we see Tom Dearden go to 7. So if it gets dropped and we see Tom Chester get into that left center role there. But if you do have Tom Chester in your team, I would be cooling the Jets just a little bit. Next one is Hamasi Makasini there, 235k for the Tigers, 30.5% owned at the moment there. And another guy, similar to Tom Chester, who I was pretty high on, I thought would get the run on for round. They've got first round bye, which makes it really annoying. We won't see him till round 2. And it's a big one because you're going to have to lock in that sort of those cheapie CTWs before the second TLT in round 1 there, so we won't know until round 2. I just think it's a bit of a risk. Now, I've heard now that Luke Laulili could get the start there in that wing. Obviously, you've got Sania Taruva on the right wing. You could have Jarrell Skelton there on the left wing. So at the moment, I think there's a 30% chance of playing round 2 there, the first match for the season. I think you're running a bit of a gauntlet there, putting Makasini there in round 1. Obviously, had that bye, and then hoping he gets named in round 2. And honestly, if he plays a couple bad games to start the season around round 2 and 3, you've definitely got the potential of Laulili or Skelton coming in there for that role there. So just cooling the Jets on Makasini, a player I did have there in my team for a little bit. Now I've just cooled the Jets on a bit of an orange light for me there, and the CTWs there. Next one is going to be the other contestant 2 or contender 2, Setu 2, who I don't think will get that spot on the right wing. There's going to be David Farley there. named at center for both trials. 235k, 37.1% owned there, giving him a 20% chance of playing in that round 1 team in Vegas. I do think Setu2 will highly get that first chance in that CTW role there for on the right wing for the Dragons there in Vegas there, which means I'm expecting Tui Pelotu to be get named on the left wing. Then you go Moses Sully, then you go Valentine Holmes there in your centers. So I am not expecting David Farley to get named for the Vegas teams. However, will we see him later on in the season? Potential, of course. It could be injuries. Setu2 could be out of form. Maybe he gets injured as well. But I think 20% is probably, I guess, generous. I'm expecting Setu2 to get named in round 1, obviously pending what happens tonight against Souths in the Charity Shield. Then the next one here, he's gone from a C grade to a B grade for me just overnight because I was really impressed with how he performed last night there. And you're probably wondering, why haven't you put him as A grade then? Jack Hetherington there. It's because I'm expecting him to not start. I just expect him to have a bench bench role there for the Storm. But I think he can have a really effective role for the Storm off the bench there. I don't expect them to start anyway. I don't expect them to start at lock. I don't expect them to start in the front row or on the edges there. You've got Jewel there, 2RF / front row forward there, 235k, 16.6% owned. And I do think, obviously, I think he will get game time. I think 70% chance of playing round 1 off the bench, that is. I think that definitely can happen. What minutes does he get off the bench? I would probably be expecting anywhere from 20 to 30, maybe 35 max. I think going from last night, I think we can expect him to get around to that 320k sort of level there. Let me just move my microphone a bit closer. I think we can expect him to get around the 320k sort of price. But again, maybe he's just there to make a little bit of cash and then he can upgrade. Maybe you think he'll be starting in a role a little bit later on. At this moment, I actually do have Hetherington there as like sort of my FRF 4 in my team there. Not really it's not really enough. It's the last thing you want to do is be stuck with a guy like a Royce Hunt or a Farmasili or who's the other guys that we've started, like a Franklin Pele kind of thing as well. Like, and these guys, if you're new to Supercoach, have been like an FRF front row sort of 4 sort of spot in previous Supercoach teams in the previous years, and these guys end up playing like 10 to 20 minutes, score like 10 to 20 points. They're an AE nightmare because they end up playing but scoring absolutely nothing there. Or, you know, you're just stuck with them. You can't, it's not worth trading them to get a big upgrade. It's a bit of a weird spot, FRF 4. So I'm still decided if I want to go Hetherington there to make a little bit of cash and potentially upgrade. Still sort of sorting out my front row bench, but I'm definitely not against Hetherington whatsoever. I think he'll be on that bench pretty consistently. And I think if there is an injury to potentially the front row or Trent Liero or Lasati, I think Jack Hetherington may actually get that spot there from what I saw last night. I was pretty impressed with what I saw against the Raiders with Hetherington there last night. All right, crossing over to this C-grade cheapies, and these guys are absolute red lights, and these are pretty much gone off the top 19 most popular cheapies, right? Under 320, obviously you see Fletcher Hunt around under 322k so far. I think the other one that was 20th that I just couldn't fit, he would be a C grade as well. I'll mention him now, but it would be Ethan Roberts, who I'm not expecting to get a bench role at all for the Tigers there. These guys are going to be guys that I've got James Walsh there twice. That is completely my bad there. These guys I'm not expecting to get a role whatsoever in the starting team or any bench sort of role for round 1 or later, even any chance for Vegas there. I'll tell you what these other cheapies are, apart from James Walsh. That's completely my bad. The other guys that I was meant to put there would be Ethan Roberts, who I just mentioned, and Jalen de Groot from the Titans there. That's completely my bad. Completely stuffed up the graphics. Should have double checked that. First one on that list is Miles Martin from the Raiders there. 2RF, dual FRF there. 201k bottom price, 20.1% owned. Probably a 10% chance of playing round 1. I don't think he'll fit onto that bench. Maybe later on in the season we will see him on the bench there, but I'm not looking at later on. I'm looking at round 1. guy. It's a guy. It's a guy that people are looking at sort of enough, and enough. If you're new to Supercoach, enough is a player that is probably you're not expecting him to play whatsoever, and maybe you can fit in a duel there. So if you are looking to loop your vice captaincy score, you can captain like a Miles Martin, and you'll cop your vice captaincy score, get double on that one there. These guys are all really good enough options there. Pretty much, obviously you want to look at bottom price if possible, potentially a duel as well. 20.1% owned. I would expect that to be a lot of people just nothing out at front row forward there in the forward role there. Again, 10% chance of playing round one. The rest of these guys, I'll just rattle them off. Cody Ramsey, bottom price, 201k CTW. I'm not sure why people are going Cody Ramsey. Maybe it's enough, but you're going to have James Tedesco, Daniel Tupou, and Mark Nwanga there in your wings. I don't think he'll play center for Billy Smith. I don't think he'll be playing much at all this year unless there's injuries. This one's really weird. Fletcher Hunt, 14.4% owned, 322k CTW slash fullback. 322k for a guy that's going to get nowhere near this team, I think, because you still got Fletcher Sharp there who can go on fullback there. You've still got Greg Marzee there. You've still got Dominic Young. You still got Dan Gagai. You still got Bradman Best. You're relying on an injury for Fletcher Hunt to get into this team. James Walsh, he is the ultimate nuff this season because he will not be playing this season. He is injured. He's done his ACL. 2RF/CTW dual, which is quite handy to have if you are looking to sort of switch between and upgrade one of your 2RFs or CTWs. Base price, 9.2% owned. This is just people nuffing him. 0%. He will not be playing this season. He is an ultimate nuff option. You can be confident he will not be playing this year. Next one is Curtis Morin there for the Titans. I don't expect him to definitely not start. I'm not expecting him to get a bench role either for the Titans. 260k, 6.3% owned. And if he does get a bench role, not expecting him to get big enough minutes at all to warrant having him there or selecting him. Again, I think it's going to be people sort of nothing in that position there at 2RF or FRF. And then obviously, instead of James Walsh, you should be looking Ethan Roberts, who is base prize for the Tigers there. Again, a player I'm not expecting to be on the bench. Maybe later on in the season, once his injuries happen, that sort of thing. But again, looks like a dual 2RF, FRF kind of nuff guy that people could be putting there for the FRF 4 position there. Then the last one is Jalen de Groot, who's about 300k. He's just CTW. I think he's fullback as well. Again, not expecting Jalen de Groot to get named at all in the team. Maybe he slides onto that bench role potentially. If he does, he's going to literally score you 10, maximum 20 points a game. I would not be selecting Jalen de Groot whatsoever. He could be an absolute AE nightmare as that little sort of extra position. Now we've got the 6-man bench. Kind of gives me same sort of similar vibes like a Dane Laurie, but maybe just a worse version of it there. But these are definitely the 6 to 8 guys I would definitely be avoiding starting with to start the season. Unless you're looking at nothing, then you can go with a James Walsh. Maybe you can go with a Miles Martin. But these other guys like your Cody Ramsey, like your Curtis Morin, your Fletcher Hunts, I would be highly, highly avoiding to start the season. Guys that will just be nowhere near sort of the team. Maybe they give you an absolute AE nightmare, come on and score single digits even, and you're just paying more than base price and bottom price than what you should be, and you can just spend that extra 50 to 60k elsewhere in your team, which is pretty valuable early on. But that'll do it for me, guys. That's your cheapie sort of episode, going through your sort of like your A-grade cheapies there. You've got 9 there on the list. I'll be advising to start with these guys. I think these guys are a very, very good chance of starting in round 1 for their respective team there. Obviously, there's your other 3 there. I'll be having a look at these B grades and sort of cooling off on them if they are on your team there. Guys who I thought may be starting in round 1, but I don't think they will be, a little bit lower than sort of 50% chance in the starting role there. And then you've got your C-grade cheapies. Guys, I would definitely be avoiding to start the season in the cheapie sort of range. 100%, you've got way better options in your cheapies, as I spoke about here and here as well. But that'll do it for me, guys. That has been your cheapie episode of the Trade Room. I've appreciate all the support. The most views I've been getting on my videos by far in my podcast. Yeah, as I said, by far. And I just can't thank you guys enough. It's been awesome. I love doing it. Doing all the graphics. It's like, even though I'm making literally nothing off it so far, being really enjoying doing it. Let me know what you want to see in the next episode. Let me know the cheapies that you're looking at starting there. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments on YouTube as well. Make sure you go check out my other episodes I brought out. We are literally 2 weeks away from the start of the season, baby. So freaking keen. But thank you so much for watching, guys, and cheers.